Raise your hand if you've ever talked about a friend behind their back. Raise your hand if you feel guilty about it. Raise your hand if your guilt prompted you to reconsider and change your behavior. If you just raised your hand, you engaged in an act of self-reflection. Good afternoon, Mr. Kidd, Ms. Bett, faculty, and friends. Today I want to talk about the importance of self-reflection. Self-reflection is a challenging skill to develop. It is the ability to analyze and look at yourself neutrally from a distance. It involves making the time to acknowledge, meditate on, evaluate, and seriously consider your behaviors, thoughts, and actions. It is the process of determining the why behind our emotions and motivations. I asked you to raise your hand earlier because I, like many of you, am guilty of engaging in toxic and manipulative behavior. And to make matters worse, I tried to justify it instead of admitting I was wrong. I said something awful about a friend of mine and failed to see the fault of my actions. It took one of my friends doing the same to me to realize how wrong I was. I could not get upset at my friend because to criticize their behavior would be to criticize my own. Although I was hurt, I am grateful because it gave me the opportunity to genuinely think about my own behavior. In hindsight, I'm ashamed of not only my actions, but my response to them. Instead of attempting to reflect and be a better person, I excused and dismissed what I did. So why is self-reflection so difficult? Self-reflection forces us to be vulnerable. It requires a degree of honesty and transparency with yourself that often paints us in an unfavorable light, and that feeling is uncomfortable. Self-reflection can present hard truths about us that are difficult to cope with. Personally, I struggled to admit that I was wrong. I failed to hold myself accountable and distorted the truth to make myself look like a better person. We support fairness and impartiality when it benefits us, but struggle to apply the same lens to our own actions. It takes a lot of strength to admit that you are wrong, and the honesty and humility you display by doing so encourages growth as a person. Another difficulty of self-reflection is that it inevitably forces change. As humans, we often tend to resist that change. Loss of control and fear of uncertainty are reasons that I'm guilty of succumbing to on multiple occasions. However, if you go through life without stopping to think and reflect on your actions, you will never acquire a deeper understanding of its purpose. Change is the only reliable constant of life, and learning to accept it while simultaneously using it positively is a valuable skill. Think about it like this. Let's say you shoot a basketball and it bounces off the backboard. If you continue to shoot that ball the exact same way 100 more times, you will never score one single point. The logical response is to modify your technique until you get the desired result. The same process applies to how we address our own behaviors. We must be flexible and open-minded in order to learn and grow as people. Self-reflection requires objectivity. You have to step back and look at the situation and then read it as though you are not involved at all and take yourself out of the picture altogether. If something went wrong, then why? How could you have acted differently, and what can you learn from it? This same technique can be used when something goes well. It is incredibly difficult to comprehend the process of removing yourself from the picture, as your personal perspective is often the single authentic vision that you can rely on at any given moment in time. The idea that it is the most authentic and the most true does not mean that that perspective is objective. It takes a sense of maturity to step back, resulting in your mind producing doubts that often spark conversations of questioning and reasoning within. From my personal experience, this was the most common beginning to the process of my own self-reflection. So how do we practice self-reflection? Although the name implies an individual exploration of yourself, I would argue that I relied on many of my friends and family along the way. Observing their positive behavior inspired me to analyze and change my own for the better. Self-reflection forces you to ask yourself a lot of daunting and often scary questions. Do you feel positive about the relationships in your life? Do you feel connected and at peace with the world around you? How does fear appear in your life, and does it hold you back? Analyze both the positives and negatives of your experiences and consider what you can change in the future. I want all of you to take a minute to look in the mirror. Evaluate the past, present, and future of your thoughts, words, and actions. How have they affected you and those around you? Look at yourself in the third person and be honest with the implications of your choices. Identify your emotions, and while it is important to learn to accept criticism, do not engage in negative self-talk. Instead, use this as a learning opportunity to inspire change and growth in yourself. Goal setting is also a tool that can be used in this process. One of my goals as a result of my own experiences is to truly think about the purpose and impact of my words. Am I using them to lift up those around me, or are they a reflection of my own insecurities? Self-reflection is a concept that I continue to struggle with, but I truly think it is my most important takeaway from my time here at Ridley. Self-reflection is important because it provides us with the opportunity to pause and take a step back from the pandemonium of life. We can determine what is going well and what is not working, and therefore what we can change to induce positive effects. Lack of reflection leads to an unchanging cycle of normalcy, which may seem stable and reliable and safe, but will not benefit us in the long run. Taking the time to self-reflect can be difficult, but finding a few minutes a day to do so will have unparalleled effects on your mental health and well-being. It helps us gain perspective by achieving clarity through processing the past. Furthermore, it can help us develop our responses to circumstances and outside stimuli by compelling us to consider the consequences of our actions. Through self-reflection, we can determine the most effective way to act in a given situation. Ultimately, self-reflection promotes learning and understanding. To quote American philosopher John Dewey, we do not learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience. We must be able to not only acknowledge our mistakes, but understand what we can change in the future to improve upon them. Making mistakes is what makes us human. The key question, however, is not whether you will make a mistake, but what your attitude and reactions to them will be. And this is where self-reflection can be your greatest tool. Self-reflection enables us to process our experiences and comprehend the reasons behind our emotions and actions. It empowers us to learn, change, and grow as individuals. Thank you.